The estate of Joan Crawford died, and I lost it. There is some nasty talk about why she didn't give her children anything from her estate. It was in 1928 that Joan Crawford bought a Spanish villa that would become the most famous home in Hollywood. For 30 years, it was the site of fancy parties for Hollywood royalty. But after she died in 1977, investigators found some troubling facts: ghosts, hidden wealth, and a shocking will that showed the dark side of Hollywood's perfect family. What happened in that house wasn't the only question. It was also why Crawford's ghost still lives there. There were a lot of problems in Joan Crawford's early life. She was born in San Antonio, Texas on March 23, 1906. When she was a baby, her father left the family, which made things hard for her mother. They had very little money. Joan worked as a laundress to help her family by the time she was 11 years old. She was strong and worked hard, even when she was a child. Joan had an accident when she was 12 years old that changed her life. She tried to jump on a moving car, but the glass cut her foot. They thought they might have to cut off her leg because the wound got so bad. Even though she got better after 3 surgeries, she will always be afraid of getting infections. This worry turned into an unhealthy need to be clean, which made her popular in Hollywood. When Joan was 16, she went to Missouri's Stevens College for a short time, but then quit. Her dream was to dance, so she went to Chicago and joined a chorus line. She began to improve her acting skills by going on stage under the name Billy Casson. By 1924, she was in New York City, where Harry Rapp, an MGM director, saw her. He offered her a test and a job that would pay her $75 a week. A letter she got on December 24, 1924, changed her life for good. A friend gave her $400 to pay for her trip, and she set off for Hollywood to start a new life. Her path to Hollywood started in a small way. She worked as Norma Shearer's body double in the 1925 movie Lady of the Night, just a few weeks after she got there. It was 19 seconds of her back being shown in one scene. You couldn't tell, but this was her first time on TV. Later, Joan made fun of the fact that her first role was funny because she was just covering for Norma Shearer. Joan's first movie part was in Sally, Irene, and Mary in 1925. At that point, MGM chose she needed a new name. Lucille Lure sounded too much like sewer, so a magazine contest was held to find a better name for her. Joan Crawford was chosen as the winner. In the end, that name would be known all over the world. This dark and strange movie called The Unknown, which came out in 1927, was her big break. Joan played Nanon, a circus artist who was scared of men's hands. She falls in love with a man who isn't wearing any arms, but she doesn't know who he really is. The movie made over $88,000, and reviewers thought Joan was great in it. It made people notice her and helped her get bigger parts. Joan became famous with Our Dancing Daughters in 1928. This movie showed how wild and careless people were in the 1920s. Diana was a young woman played by Joan who loved to dance and enjoy life to the fullest. In one well-known scene, she danced the Charleston for more than 3 minutes on a table. She filmed for 2 days straight and her feet hurt by the end, but she wouldn't stop until it was perfect. It made over $1 million at the box office, which is a great sign. Joan's fancy clothes, like a dress with shimmering beads, became famous. She was so in tune with the spirit of the jazz age that Scott Fitzgerald called her the perfect flapper. In the 1930s, Joan Crawford's life was full of changes and risks, but she didn't give up. Many stars couldn't make the change from silent movies to talking movies because their sounds didn't fit, or they just couldn't get used to it. Joan was not ready to quit her job, so she put in a lot of effort to adapt. She practiced all the time and took singing lessons to get better. Her hard work paid off when Untamed 1929, her first talkie, became a big hit. Joan played Bingo Dowling in Untamed. She was a wild woman who grew up in the bush and was trying to fit in with other people. She could show off her new skills in this part. Voice teachers helped her practice her lines for hours, and she worked long days to make sure everything was right. There was a lot at stake because movies changed so quickly. If she failed, it could be the end of her career. But the movie was a big hit when it came out. It made almost $1 million, which was a lot of money back then, especially since the Great Depression had just begun. The critics loved her work, and she was sure to have a bright future in Hollywood. Sadly, there are no copies of the movie left today, which makes her amazing first appearance in a talking picture even more mysterious. Joan not only made it in Hollywood, she thrived there. By the middle of the 1930s, she was one of MGM's bigger stars. She was up against tough actors like Greta Garbo and Norma Shearer. The best parts were given to Norma Shearer because she was married to Irving Thalberg, who was the head of MGM. Joan didn't like it and famously asked, "How can I compete with Norma when she's sleeping with the boss?" Joan's movies often made more money at the box office, even though they had this flaw. Fans loved how approachable and hard-working she seemed. Her competition with Garbo was not the same. People thought Garbo was mysterious and classy, while Joan was seen as more simple and approachable. Both were successful, but Joan stood out because she worked so hard all the time. Everyone she worked with respected her because she always got to every set early and ready to go. During this time, Joan's most well-known movies were Grand Hotel, 1932, and The Women, 1939. A lot of people saw Grand Hotel, which starred Greta Garbo and John Barrymore. It was great that Joan played a stenographer who wished for a better life, even though she wasn't the main star. It made a lot of money and won an Oscar for Best Picture. After Joan needed a comeback, The Women came out. In 1938, she was called box office poison, but her part as a sharp and evil woman in The Women showed that she could still captivate audiences. The movie did well at the box office and helped her image. Joan became famous for playing roles of people who had to work hard to get ahead. During the Great Depression, people really related to these rags-to-riches stories. In movies like Dancing Lady, 1933, and Sadie McKee, 1934, women got through hard times, which gave people hope when the economy was bad. Joan played a burlesque dancer out to make it on Broadway in Dancing Lady. The movie was a huge hit, and it was also Fred Astaire's first movie part. The play by Sadie McKee was about a working-class woman who moved up in society. It was so famous that it broke records for the most people who went to the theater. Lots of people could relate to Joan's characters, and her own story of going from being poor to being famous made her even more amazing. Clark Gable was one of Joan's most well-known partners. They worked together on 8 movies, beginning with Dance Fools, Dance 101, 931. It was electric to watch them together on TV, and fans loved it. Joan played a factory worker who becomes the mistress of a rich guy in the 1931 movie Possessed, which was about class and ambition. The movie made over $1 million, which is a lot of money. The movie Dancing Lady was also a big hit, and Joan's character got better at show business. Aside from acting, Joan and Clark were dating, which made their movies more exciting. Their last movie together, Strange Cargo 9940, showed that they still had a lot of energy even after they broke up. They were one of the most famous pairs in Hollywood. Together, their movies made MGM more than $15 million. In the 1940s, Joan Crawford's whole life changed. She had been a big star at MGM for 18 years, but by 1943, things were going badly for her. MGM used to believe in her, but now they don't. She felt like they no longer respected her because they kept giving her small parts in bad movies. The last straw was when they gave Greer Garson the lead role in Madame Curie, a part Joan really wanted. She made up her mind to stop. To get out of her MGM deal, she paid $100,000 when she was 37 years old. Many people thought her career was over because actresses her age were seen as too old back then, so she was taking a big risk. Joan didn't give up, though. She got a new deal with Warner Brothers just 2 days after leaving MGM. She got $500,000 for 3 movies, which at the time was a huge sum of money. It also gave her the power to approve stories, which she had never had before. She wasn't going to watch any more bad movies. It took her a year and a half to find the right part, so she turned down script after script. Somebody else didn't want that part, but it came up in Mildred Pierce 1945. Bette Davis, Ann Sheridan, and Barbara Stanwyck all said no, but Joan jumped at the chance. It wasn't easy to get the part. Michael Curtiz, the director, didn't want Joan at first. He believed she was too old for Hollywood, but Joan fought to be there. It was very rare for people her level to agree to do a screen test, and she paid for her own hair, makeup, and clothes for it. The risk paid off. She got the part. It wasn't easy to film. Curtiz was very angry and often yelled at Joan, but she didn't give up. He made fun of her at one point, and she snapped back. The set went dark until the studio head came and fixed things. But the movie was a big hit when it was over. People crowded into theaters to see Joan's act, which got great reviews. Joan got the Academy Award for Best Actress in 1946 for her role in Mildred Pierce. She didn't go to the event because she didn't think she would win. Joan's fame grew after Mildred Pierce. It was in 1946 that she played a rich woman in love with a young pianist. She got good reviews and people really liked the movie. The scene where she walks into the ocean is one that people will never forget. It was filmed over 3 days in freezing water because Joan insisted on making it right. Then, in Possessed, 1947, she played a woman who was slowly going crazy. Joan went to a mental hospital to learn more about the inmates in order to get ready. After all her hard work, she was nominated for another Oscar for her role. Joan did not stop moving forward. She played a writer whose husband is trying to kill her in the 1952 movie Sudden Fear. Not only was she the star, she also helped make the movie happen by persuading the company to buy the story and cast her in it. The movie did well, and Joan was nominated for her 3rd Oscar. At the time, she was 47 years old, but her abilities showed that age didn't matter. Joan Crawford had a glamorous life, but her death was a story full of drama and debate. The value of her fortune was about $2 million when she died on May 10, 1977. It is now worth over $10 million. This wealth came from more than just her fame as an actor in Hollywood's golden age. Joan knew how to handle money well and had other ways to make money. She made a lot of money from her job with the Pepsi-Cola company. She was on the board and later became a spokesperson after marrying Alfred Steele, the CEO of the company, in 1955. Joan left behind more than just money when she died. She had a lot of expensive things like her apartment on East 69th Street in Manhattan, where she spent her last years, and a lot of Hollywood memorabilia like her 1946 Oscar for Mildred Pierce. In 1993, that Oscar by itself sold for $426,000. During her 50-year career, Joan also gathered a lot of gold, furs, and other valuable things. What shocked everyone the most about Joan's fortune was her will, which she signed just a few months before she died. Christina and Christopher, two of her children, were left out. At the very end of the will, there was a scary sentence that said, "I have no plans to leave anything to my son Christopher or my daughter Christina for reasons that they know well." Many people were shocked by this comment because Joan's adoption of her children had been made public as part of her Hollywood family image. In 1940, she gave birth to Christina. In 1943, she had Christopher. In 1947, she had twins, Kathy and Cindy. The will, on the other hand, showed that she had serious problems with Christina and Christopher. Some of Joan's money was given to her younger children, Kathy and Cindy, as well as to a number of charities. Kathy got the most, which included Joan's personal belongings and keepsakes. The Mildred Pierce Oscar was one of them. Kathy later sold it at auction. Kathy and Cindy were each given $757,000 in trust funds, which is around $380,000 today. In her will, Joan also showed how kind she was. The American Cancer Society, the Muscular Dystrophy Association, the USO, and the Motion Picture Home for Retired Film Workers were some of the causes she left a lot of money to. This was something she had been very concerned with all her life. Joan also saved $35,000 for her maid Betty Barker as a thank you for all the years of hard work. She also saved smaller amounts for close friends and staff. But the choice to leave Christina and Christopher out of the will caused a very nasty court case. They sued to change the will only 5 months after Joan died. They said Joan wasn't thinking straight when she wrote her will and that Kathy and her husband had unfairly affected her. They said Joan's drinking in her later years showed she didn't have good sense. Many people who knew Joan in her last years came forward because of the case, which also brought up family secrets. In July 1979, after almost 2 years of court battles, a deal was reached. Christina and Christopher each got $227,500, which is a small part of the $2 million estate. Their claims were heard even though they didn't get an equal share of the payment. She paid $57,500 for her home at 426 North Bristol Avenue in Brentwood, Los Angeles. In the summer of 1928, she fondly called it El Jodo, which is a combination of her name and the name of her first husband, Douglas Fairbanks Jr. She lived in this house as her main home for almost 30 years, until 1956. The house used to be a Spanish-style villa, but it has been fixed up and added onto over the years to become a Georgian-style estate. It became a sign of Hollywood glitz and matched Crawford's growing fame. Crawford lived in El Jodo when her career was at its peak. She went from making silent movies to making talkies, and her role in Mildred Pierce earned her an Oscar in 1945. Many Hollywood parties were held at the house, and Clark Gable, Marlene Dietrich, and Barbara Stanwyck were among the guests. She also accepted her Oscar while lying in bed and acting to be sick, which became an iconic moment. Photographers were there to record the event. Crawford often made improvements to the house. She added a large dining room, a new kitchen wing, and a 3-car garage. In 1935, by 1937, the house had a swimming pool, a private theater for showing movies, and a court that could be used for both badminton and tennis. It was well known that Crawford was crazy about keeping things clean. She made sure that sanitizer was used every day to clean the house. Her need to be perfect even showed in her clothes. She fired a maid who was using wire hangers instead of padded ones, which became popular and is now part of pop culture. It was 1,558 square feet, had 6 bedrooms and 10 bathrooms when Crawford moved out in 1956. Inside, it was decorated with silk brocade and gold details that were very fancy. The grand foyer had a long, winding staircase that Crawford often used to make grand appearances for her guests. The living room was very big and had a grand piano and custom-made furniture. It was custom-tailored. It set Crawford off. 20 people could sit in the dining room, which was great for her fancy dinner parties. There was a sitting room, a dressing room, and a marble bathroom with a sunken tub in her master bedroom upstairs. The house had a wood-paneled study, a trendy kitchen for the time, and a wine cellar. Each guest bedroom had its own bathroom. For outdoor events, the Olympic-sized pool and sun terrace were great. The pool house and private theater made the farm feel even more luxurious. El Hodo stood for Hollywood glitz, but it was said to have a darker side. Christina Crawford, Crawford's adopted daughter, wrote a book called Mommy Dearest in 1978. Christina said her mother got angry about wire hangers in her room and ripped clothes off of them while yelling, "Never use wire hangers." In her letter, she also said that Joan would lock her in the dining room for hours if she didn't eat rare meat. Christina said that the basement was sometimes used to lock her up as a punishment. Within these stories, Crawford was shown to be unstable, having violent attacks and being very strict about cleaning. But the claims in Mommy Dearest are still being talked about. Kathy and Cindy, Joan's other adopted children, denied the abuse claims and said she was loving and dedicated. The book changed the way people thought about El Jodo for good, no matter what was true. It stopped being a fancy home and started being a house with scary stories. There were tales of ghosts and other supernatural things happening at El Jodo even after Crawford left. Strange things were said to happen inside the house over the years. One of the most well-known stories was about a wall in the living room that allegedly caught fire twice, in the 1940s and 1950s. The Beverly Hills Fire Department didn't know what was going on. Witnesses said the fires happened again in the same place in the 1980s. People also said they saw a ghostly figure that looked like Crawford, usually dressed in a long white dress, near the stairs or her old bedroom. Some people even said they could hear a typewriter from Crawford's study, which is where he used to write cards. Reverend Rosalind Bruera, a spiritual detective, was brought in to look at the house in 1989. She said it was a spiritual energy hub where she could feel the presence of everyone from Hollywood ghosts to gangsters and politicians. There were even scary tales that bodies were buried in the basement, but no proof was ever found. People were always interested in El Jodo because of these ghost stories. They added to the building's mythical status as a symbol of old Hollywood and a mysterious place.